We grow up inside a culture that teaches one dangerous confusion, that helping is always holy, that saying yes is always good, that boundaries are acts of cruelty. From childhood, we are trained to believe that to be loving is to be available, that to be spiritual is to self-erase, and so we become addicted to fixing, addicted to saving, addicted to carrying the weight that is not ours. But what if this impulse to rescue everyone isn't love at all? What if it's interference, a subtle form of control that stops life from doing its real work? Because life, you see, teaches through consequence, and when you keep rescuing someone from the results of their own choices, you stand between them and their lesson. You are not helping, you are interrupting evolution itself. You are holding the butterfly's wings while it's trying to break free from the cocoon. And what happens when you do that? It dies before it ever learns to fly. This doesn't mean we must become cold or indifferent. Indifference is just the other extreme of the same disease. The question isn't whether to care, it's how to care, and who deserves that care. Because some people don't want healing, they want an audience. Some don't want freedom, they want someone new to hold the chains for them. The tragedy is not that they take from you. The tragedy is that your kindness keeps them weak. Let's look at the first kind of person you must recognize, the chronically lazy. There is a vast difference between someone who is struggling and someone who has surrendered their will to inertia. The one who struggles uses help as a stepping stone. The lazy one uses it as a hammock. They've decided, consciously or not, that life is too heavy, and someone else must carry it. And the moment you step in, you become that someone else. Watch how nature handles this. A bird doesn't feed a chick that refuses to open its beak. A tree doesn't keep nourishing a dead branch. Nature cuts away not from cruelty but from wisdom. If something doesn't grow, it's eventually pruned. That's how life keeps itself alive. The lazy always have stories. Their childhood, their luck, their boss, their pain, and perhaps it's all true. But truth isn't the question. The question is, what are they doing about it right now? Are they taking even one small step? Or are they waiting for a savior to do it for them? When you help someone who refuses to move, you steal from them the one treasure they need most, the discovery that they are capable. Some of you have been carrying others for years, paying their bills, solving their problems, cleaning their chaos. Each time you tell yourself it's compassion, but is it? Or is it fear? Fear of being seen as cruel, fear of saying no, fear of letting them fall. What if your help is the very thing keeping them asleep? Because the truth is brutal but merciful. The lazy must feel hunger. They must feel discomfort. They must meet the natural consequence of their stagnation. Only when the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change do they begin to move. Then there are the perpetually ungrateful. You can hand them your time, your money, your love, even your heart, and they'll receive it like air, invisible and owed. Gratitude, you see, is not about manners, it's about awareness. A grateful person recognizes they are part of something larger. The ungrateful live as if the universe is their servant. I once knew a man who paid another's rent for 6 months, sacrificed his own comfort so his friend wouldn't lose his home. And how did the friend respond? Complaints. The apartment was too small, the neighborhood too poor, life too unfair. When the money stopped, anger came. The gift had turned in his mind into a debt. This is what the ungrateful do. They don't see kindness, they see weakness. They don't see generosity, they see opportunity. They are bottomless wells. No matter how much you pour, nothing fills. When you give to them, you aren't planting seeds. You're throwing food into a black hole. And then there are the arrogant and self-righteous. These people don't seek help. They seek validation. They don't want truth. They want applause. Pride pretends to be confidence, but beneath it trembles fear, the terror of being wrong. Their identity depends on being right. Challenge that illusion, and you threaten their very existence. So they argue, reject, and defend until exhaustion. You cannot help someone who insists they need no help. Even Jesus walked away from such people. He didn't chase or plead. He spoke truth, and when it wasn't received, he moved on. Because wisdom cannot be forced on those committed to their own foolishness. The proud must fall. They must taste the ground before they finally look up. Next, beware of the habitually wicked. We live in a world that hates that word, wicked. We prefer troubled or misunderstood. But let's be honest, some people know exactly what they're doing. They lie, manipulate, and harm without remorse. When you help them, you become part of their machinery. You provide the resources they use to dig deeper into their darkness. Wisdom traditions warn about this for a reason. It's not lack of compassion, it's understanding the physics of energy. Whatever you feed, grows. And when you feed the dark, it devours both of you. And then the incurably foolish. The fool isn't stupid, they're stubborn. They repeat the same mistakes, convinced the outcome will change. They love advice but never apply it. They ask for help, but what they want is rescue. Each crisis is recycled drama, each lesson avoided. Try to save them, and they'll drown you too. Only consequences can teach what words cannot. Let life do its work. The sixth type is the master manipulator. Charming, subtle, dangerous. They don't take by force, they make you want to give. They know that good hearts carry guilt like a leash. They tell stories, they play roles. Victim with one, hero with another. Compare the stories and you'll see, none of them match. Help them once and you're hooked. Stop helping and you become their villain. And finally, the unrepentant rebel. They know right from wrong and choose wrong anyway. They've been warned, taught, corrected, but defiance is their religion. You keep believing they'll change, but they don't, because they don't want to. You cannot fight harder for someone's freedom than they fight for it themselves. So what do? Do we stop caring altogether? No. We learn discernment. Compassion without boundaries isn't love, it's leakage. True love respects consequence. True compassion sometimes means stepping back, letting others meet their own darkness, their own mirror. Because often it's only through hitting bottom that a soul remembers it can stand. Your energy is sacred, your time finite, your kindness precious. Give them wisely. Because not everyone deserves your help. And that's not cruelty, that's wisdom. We've been conditioned to believe that love means never letting go, that to care is to carry. But real love, awake love, doesn't smother, it liberates. It understands that every soul has its own curriculum, and when you keep interfering with someone's lessons, you're rewriting a book that isn't yours to edit. The truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to step aside. Let life be their teacher. Pain, loss, struggle. These are the sacred professors that ego avoids. But no human ever wakes up without them. Your help might soothe their symptoms, but it also numbs their evolution. We like to think of ourselves as saviors. It flatters the ego. I'm the one who understands. I'm the one who sees their potential. But ask yourself, are you helping them? Or are you protecting your image as a helper? Because sometimes the impulse to fix others is just disguised fear. Fear of facing your own wounds. Fear of watching others suffer because you haven't made peace with suffering itself. Look closer. Why do you rush to heal what makes you uncomfortable? Why can't you allow someone to fall, to fail, to hurt? Is it really for them? Or is it for your need to feel good, to feel useful, to feel enlightened? You see, the compulsion to save is not love. It's control wearing the mask of virtue. Real love gives space. It knows that pain isn't punishment, it's process. When the seed cracks, it hurts. When the shell breaks, it bleeds light. But without that fracture, there's no growth. So you must learn a radical art, the art of letting people suffer just enough to find their own power. And that requires immense inner strength. Because watching someone you care for self-destruct is torture. Every instinct screams, do something, but your wisdom whispers, wait. Because if you remove the friction, you remove the fire that forges them. This is where you must practice discernment. You must learn to feel the difference between helping and enabling, between compassion and codependence. Ask yourself, does my help empower this person or does it keep them dependent? Do I give because it's right or because I'm afraid to lose approval? Do I rescue them to relieve their pain, or to silence my own discomfort? If the answer exposes your fear, then your help isn't love, it's ego maintenance. There's a universal law few dare to acknowledge. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Love is infinite, yes, but your human capacity to express it is not. You must choose where to plant it. Give to those who can grow from it. Because giving endlessly to those who only consume is not compassion. It's self-erasure. And you cannot heal the world by deleting yourself. Let's be blunt. Some people do not want to wake up. They want comfort, attention, drama, anything but truth. They want a savior, not self-responsibility. And if you keep trying to save them, you are signing a contract with their stagnation. It's harsh, but liberation often is. To walk the path of awakening, you must let go of your need to be the hero. Heroes need villains, saviors need victims, but consciousness needs neither. It only asks for awareness. Clean, direct, uncompromised. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to save others, you finally have something real to offer them. Presence. No judgment, no fixing, no manipulation. Just the spaciousness where truth can emerge on its own. And if they are ready, they will rise to meet it. If not, they will turn away, and that's okay because love doesn't chase, it radiates. You are not here to carry everyone to the shore. You are here to become the shore itself. The steady ground others may find when they are done drowning. But they must swim there by their own effort. So stop confusing exhaustion with compassion. Stop equating martyrdom with love. Stop bleeding for those who have no interest in healing. There is a sacred threshold you must learn to honor. The line between what is yours and what is not. When you cross that line in the name of kindness, you steal from both of you. Them of their lesson, yourself of your peace. Let them walk their road. Let them fall. Let them meet the consequence that awakens. Your task is not to carry them. It's to see them clearly, love them silently, and trust that life knows what it's doing. Because in the end, wisdom isn't about saying yes more often. It's about knowing when no is the most loving word in the universe. Human beings love to play the role of the good one, the savior, the empath, the healer. It gives us purpose in a world that often feels meaningless. But behind that mask of goodness hides a dangerous illusion. The belief that we know better than life itself. That we can rescue someone from the very pain that was designed to wake them. You see, the ego loves helping because it feels powerful when others feel powerless. It loves being needed, being thanked, being the one who understands. But awareness asks a harder question. Is my help really about them? Or is it about my identity as the helper? Most of what we call selflessness is actually another form of self-centeredness, a subtler one, wearing the perfume of virtue. Because when you look deeply, you'll see that constantly rescuing others is just another way to avoid your own silence, your own helplessness, your own shadow. When someone is drowning in their chaos, it's excruciating to watch. But there is a sacred boundary where compassion ends and control begins. And crossing that boundary, even out of love, still keeps both of you asleep. The truth is, some souls need to fall. Not because they're bad, but because the fall is their awakening. They must collide with their own pain until it cracks the shell of illusion they've built around themselves. And if you keep cushioning that fall, you're not saving them. You're delaying their birth. Pain is not the enemy. Discomfort is not punishment. They are the architects of awareness. Every scar life carves into you carries a blueprint of growth. When you rush to erase someone's pain, you erase their chance to see that blueprint. Real love does not interfere with destiny. It watches without judgment, and it understands that each person must be forged by their own fire. You can't give someone the wisdom that comes from burning. You can only stand beside them as they learn to bear the heat. But there's another layer to this. Sometimes helping isn't just about the other person's avoidance. It's about yours. You fix others because it's easier than facing your own brokenness. You guide others because you're terrified of being lost. You nurture others because it distracts you from your own unmet needs. So be honest with yourself. Who are you really saving? Them or the image of yourself that feels worthy only when it's needed. The enlightened person learns this through heartbreak. There's a difference between love and attachment to being loving. The first sets you free. The second chains you to endless exhaustion. Let me tell you something that will unsettle your idea of goodness. You do not owe anyone your energy. You do not owe anyone your healing. You do not owe anyone your peace. You can love someone and still walk away. You can care deeply and still refuse to fix. In fact, sometimes walking away is the most profound act of love, because it forces both of you to meet truth directly, without illusion. When you say no with clarity, you are not rejecting them. You are honoring the law of life itself, that every being must face the mirror of their own creation. Life doesn't evolve through constant comfort. It evolves through friction, through collapse, through the disillusionment that finally makes space for truth. And here's the paradox. When you finally stop trying to fix others, when you stop grasping and rescuing and performing compassion, something miraculous happens. Your love becomes clean. It no longer manipulates. It no longer bargains. It no longer drains. It simply is. It flows without agenda, without the secret desire to be seen as good. It allows others to find their own power, and in doing so, it restores yours. You begin to see that love is not about giving endlessly. It's about giving consciously. It's not about sacrifice. It's about alignment. And alignment means you no longer pour yourself into black holes and call it kindness. You no longer confuse guilt with empathy. You no longer chase validation through exhaustion. You understand that true compassion does not say, "Let me carry you." It says, "Stand. I'll hold the light until you can see your own feet." That's the moment your love stops being a transaction and starts becoming transformation. Because every time you refuse to participate in someone's unconscious cycle, you are not abandoning them. You are setting both of you free. There's something quietly revolutionary about saying no. Not out of anger, not out of apathy, but out of clarity. Because no, when spoken from awareness, is one of the most spiritual words in existence. It's the sound of consciousness choosing where to flow and where to stop leaking. It's the boundary that turns compassion into wisdom. You see, we've been taught that love has no limits, that to be spiritual is to be endlessly giving, endlessly open, endlessly forgiving. But endless openness isn't enlightenment, it's erosion. If the river had no banks, it would cease to be a river. If the sun shone everywhere with equal intensity, there would be no life, only burning. So understand this, boundaries are not walls. They are forms of intelligence. They tell life, this is where I end and this is where you begin. And when you respect that boundary, your energy stops scattering. It begins to focus, to radiate, to strengthen. The awakened ones eventually realize that clarity is kinder than compromise. When you keep saying yes to preserve harmony, you're not preserving love, you're feeding delusion. You're teaching others that your energy is a public resource, that your spirit is an open buffet for anyone who arrives hungry enough. And here's the strange thing, people will take as much as you allow, not because they're evil, but because you've trained them to. You've taught them that you will say yes even when you're empty. You've made your exhaustion look like virtue. You call it being nice, but really it's fear. Fear of being seen as selfish, fear of losing love, fear of not being the good one. But spiritual maturity begins the moment you understand that self-respect is not selfishness. When you begin to guard your peace, you're not withdrawing from the world. You're finally meeting it honestly. Because every time you say yes while your soul screams no, you're lying. You're creating distortion in yourself and in the other person. And truth cannot grow in distortion. You might have noticed something. The more awakened you become, the less you can tolerate falseness. The fake smiles, the small talk, the polite "I'm fine," all of it begins to feel unbearable. Because awakening purifies you. It strips away what's performative. It leaves only what's real. And what's real doesn't need to explain itself. So, you start stepping back, quietly. Not with resentment, but with reverence. You stop justifying your solitude. You stop apologizing for your silence. You begin to understand that your energy is sacred architecture, and not everyone is meant to enter. When you choose to protect your energy, people will call you cold. When you choose to rest instead of rescue, they'll call you distant. When you choose truth over comfort, they'll call you difficult. Let them, because they are naming from their perspective, not yours. They are measuring your awakening by the standards of their sleep. The truth is, you're not rejecting them. You're rejecting distortion. You're refusing to play roles that no longer fit. And that is what frightens people. Not your distance, but your clarity. Because clarity is contagious. When you stop performing, you silently challenge everyone around you to do the same. And that terrifies the ego. But here's the miracle. When you stop betraying yourself, you stop betraying others too. Because every false yes creates resentment, and every resentment poisons love. But an honest no, spoken with peace, preserves it. So you must learn to love people enough to disappoint them, to let them be angry, to let them misunderstand, because that misunderstanding is often the first crack in their own illusion. Love does not always sound like comfort. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Sometimes it sounds like distance. Sometimes it sounds like no. The awakened heart understands that truth and love are not opposites. They are the same vibration, expressed differently. And when you start to live from that vibration, your relationships change. You stop collecting people. You stop managing perceptions. You stop bending yourself into shapes that please the room. You become simple, but not small. Kind, but not naive. Open, but not exposed. And this is where you begin to understand the real meaning of strength. Because strength isn't how much you endure. It's how cleanly you choose. It's how silently you walk away when your spirit whispers, enough. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth, your truth, your clarity. You simply embody it. And those who can meet you there will. The rest will fall away naturally, not as punishment, but as purification. Because the more awake you become, the less company you need. Not because you dislike people, but because you've discovered the rarest companion of all, yourself. There comes a point when you stop chasing connection and start choosing resonance. It is not that you become antisocial. It is that you can no longer tolerate what is artificial. The conversations that circle endlessly around complaints, competition, or chaos begin to feel like static to your soul. You see through them too clearly now. You see the masks, the small performances, the subtle manipulations, and you realize that most people are not talking to you. They are talking to the image of themselves that they are desperately trying to protect. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You no longer crave to be understood. You crave to be real. And that's when solitude stops feeling like loneliness and starts feeling like oxygen. This is the stage where many mistake your silence for arrogance. They think you've changed, and they're right. You have. You've changed frequencies. You've stopped living from approval and started living from awareness, and awareness doesn't need applause. When you step out of the collective noise, something extraordinary begins to happen. You can finally hear yourself. Not the self shaped by expectation or fear, but the self that whispers under all that noise. The one who doesn't speak in panic, but in presence. The one who doesn't ask for permission to exist. And from that silence, you start to see people differently, not as good or bad, awake or asleep, but as expressions of consciousness at different stages of remembering. Some are still lost in the dream, and that's okay. Every soul has its own timing, but what changes is that you no longer try to wake them. You no longer interrupt their dream to tell them it's a dream. You let them sleep because you understand that waking cannot be forced. It happens the moment their suffering becomes unbearable, not a second before. You stop being the preacher of truth and start being the presence of it. And presence doesn't convince, it transmits. When people stand near you, they feel something different. Space, ease, silence that doesn't need to fill itself. They might not understand it, but they sense it. Because awakened energy doesn't argue, it resonates. It speaks directly to what's hidden beneath another's defenses. So you realize that the greatest gift you can offer the world is not your advice, not your effort, not even your help. It's your state of being. Your calm becomes the teaching. Your clarity becomes the map. Your peace becomes permission for others to find their own. And you do this quietly, without fanfare, without the need to be seen. Because truth doesn't advertise. It simply shines. It's ironic, isn't it? You spend so many years trying to change the world, to fix others, to earn love, only to discover that the real transformation happens when you stop trying to change anything at all. You realize that awakening isn't about adding more. It is about removing what is false. Every illusion, every belief, every identity you've been carrying begins to fall away until you stand there, naked, ordinary, present, and yet utterly free. And that's when you understand the paradox of awakening. You don't become special, you become simple. You don't rise above the world, you sink into it, but with open eyes. You don't escape humanity, you finally embody it, without the lies, without the masks, without the endless striving to be something else. In this simplicity, compassion deepens, not the sentimental kind that pities others, but the quiet understanding that sees through both victim and villain. You see that everyone, yes, everyone, is doing their best within the limits of their current awareness. So you stop judging, you stop condemning, you stop fixing, you just witness. And from that witnessing, a new kind of love is born, one that has no opposite. Because when you stop needing people to change, they finally have the space to. That's the final irony. The moment you let go of trying to save the world, you actually start healing it, simply by being what the world has forgotten how to be. Still, aware, and unafraid of truth. You are no longer the rescuer. You are the reminder, the mirror that reflects what everyone else already is but has forgotten to see. You don't shout that truth anymore. You embody it, calmly, silently, like the sky. And those who are ready will notice, they always do. There's a quiet elegance in realizing you no longer have anything to prove, that you don't need to defend your peace, justify your solitude, or explain your clarity. The world thrives on noise, on motion, on spectacle. But awakening is the art of becoming invisible to that circus. You begin to walk differently, not because you're avoiding life, but because you're finally moving with it. And here is the subtle truth. The awakened one doesn't withdraw out of superiority. They withdraw out of sensitivity. Their awareness has become too fine, too tuned to tolerate falseness. Noise that once felt stimulating now feels violent. Conversations that once seemed important now sound hollow. Even ambition begins to taste like dust. You find yourself craving silence like water. Not the silence of escape, but the silence that hums beneath all creation. The space from which everything rises and to which everything returns. And in that silence, something profound becomes clear. You were never the helper, never the fixer, never the rescuer. You were always the space in which all of it was happening. The savior and the saved, both were stories being played out inside you. The consciousness watching itself from two different angles. The moment you see this, all striving ends. You stop trying to be good. You stop trying to be right. You stop trying to be awake. Because you finally understand that even those labels are part of the dream. You're not the character chasing enlightenment. You're the screen on which the chase appears. From this point, the whole idea of helping others transforms. You no longer try to change people, not because you don't care, but because you see that there are no others. The same consciousness is simply playing different roles, speaking through different masks. And once that truth lands, compassion becomes effortless. It's not something you do, it's what you are. You help without trying. You give without calculating. You love without needing a reason. Because you've stopped confusing love with transaction. It's like breathing. You don't say, "I'll inhale only if I get to exhale." You simply breathe. That's how love flows when the self disappears. From this space, your no is as sacred as your yes. Your silence carries more power than 1,000 sermons. Your presence teaches more than your words ever could. People might misunderstand you. They might call you distant, detached, cold. But you'll smile because you know that detachment is not disconnection. It's the purest form of connection. When you're not tangled in others' illusions, you can finally see them clearly. You love them not as characters in your story, but as consciousness itself, playing out its divine confusion. And in that seeing, there is no more blame, no more saving, no more trying to fix life, because how can the wave fix the ocean? It was never broken to begin with. You begin to laugh more, not out of mockery, but from recognition. You see the cosmic comedy in all of it. People running around trying to become what they already are, you included. You laugh at your past self, the one who tried so hard to wake others, who thought enlightenment was an achievement rather than a remembrance. And in that laughter, a lightness fills you. You stop taking spirituality so seriously. You stop taking yourself so seriously. Because you realize that awakening isn't the end of the game. It is learning to play it consciously. You still live, love, fail, and fall. But now you do it with awareness. You don't resist the currents, you dance with them. You don't seek perfection. You embrace paradox. You can be silent and fierce, soft and unshakable, alone yet deeply connected. You can say no and still love, walk away and still care, disappear and still belong. Because now you understand, belonging was never about the crowd, it was about alignment. When you align with truth, you belong everywhere and nowhere at once. And from that center, everything that once drained you begins to flow effortlessly. Work becomes meditation. Relationships become mirrors. Even pain becomes instruction. You stop searching for meaning because you've become meaning itself. The quiet pulse of awareness witnessing the endless play of form. And perhaps the most beautiful part? You no longer need to shine to prove your light. You let the world be as it is, chaotic, messy, beautiful. And you remain the calm eye of the storm. Because at last you know. Helping others was never about saving them. It was about remembering that there was never anything to save. Eventually, you begin to see that even the idea of awakening itself was part of the illusion. A story the mind told to make sense of its own unfolding. You thought you were climbing towards something higher, purer, holier, but now you see, there was nowhere to climb. There was no summit to reach. Only the recognition that you were never separate from the mountain to begin with. You remember how desperately you once wanted to be enlightened, how you tried to fix yourself, purify yourself, prove yourself worthy of truth. But truth was never hiding. It was always here, woven into every mistake, every heartbreak, every moment you thought was unspiritual. The light was never at the end of the tunnel, it was in the eyes of the one walking through it. And when that realization settles in, the need to get somewhere dissolves. You stop chasing transcendence and begin to find the sacred in the ordinary, in the sound of dishes clinking, in a stranger's laugh, in the wind moving through a window half open. Everything becomes a form of meditation, not because you are trying to be mindful, but because there's no longer anything unmindful left in you. This is where life starts to feel effortless, not because it becomes easy, but because resistance ends. You are no longer fighting the flow, no longer dividing existence into spiritual and mundane. You realize that God hides in the details, that the infinite expresses itself through the finite, through you, through me, through everyone still pretending not to see. It's here that you understand the quiet secret every master eventually discovers. Awakening is not escape. It's full participation. You don't float above the world, you fall in love with it more deeply. You taste everything. You grieve fully. You laugh without restraint. You care fiercely, but without the poison of control. You see the pain of others, and instead of trying to fix it, you let it move through you. You let compassion arise like breath, natural and spontaneous. Not pity, not preaching, just presence. Presence itself becomes the medicine. You realize that the most healing thing you can offer another human being is not advice, not instruction, not even love in the emotional sense, but awareness. Because awareness is what dissolves illusion. It's the silent flame that melts every shadow simply by being seen. And so you walk through life quietly illuminating rooms, conversations, moments, not with effort, but with your being. You stop needing to do good. You've become good, not morally, but existentially. You've aligned yourself with what is. That alignment radiates peace, a peace that no one can define but everyone can feel. And strangely enough, that peace begins to attract others, not the many, but the few who are ready. They find you without searching, drawn not by words, but by resonance. They sense something familiar in you, the same awareness stirring within themselves. You speak little, you teach even less. But your silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, others begin to glimpse their own reflection. You don't awaken them. You simply remind them that they were never asleep. That's the final paradox of all of this. You disappear, and in disappearing, you finally appear. The you that was trying to save, to heal, to awaken others dissolves, and what remains is what always was: consciousness, presence, life itself. There is nothing left to preach, nothing left to protect, nothing left to prove. Only this, the quiet laughter of being, the gentle unfolding of now. So if you ever find yourself exhausted from helping, from caring, from explaining, stop, step back. Remember, you were never meant to hold the whole world in your hands. You are the world holding itself. Let others stumble. Let them fall. Let them find their way. You don't need to light every candle. You are the flame. And that flame, calm, steady, unbothered, will always be enough. Because love, in its truest form, is not the act of rescuing others. It's the quiet knowing that everything, even suffering, even confusion, even loss, is already on its way home.